Moolala is brought to you by the nonprofit credit counseling agency Credit Canada and by Home Equity Bank, provider of the CHIP reverse mortgage. Enough. Enough. What is enough? Perhaps, maybe, perhaps, if we were able to get really, really clear on what is enough for ourselves, it might affect how we behave when it comes to money. Mike Braga is a licensed insolvency trustee with BDO Canada. He is also the host of the Rogers TV show Money Matters. And he joins us now to talk about bastante, which is the Portuguese word for enough. Mike, I love that we're talking about enough. Why are we talking about it in Portuguese?
Well, because it's one of those words in Portuguese that has many meanings. And so, and similar in English, but it's just something gets lost in translation. And so, you use the word basta, which is an abbreviation to mean, when you're fed up, and you've had enough. Or, bastante means, do you have enough in terms of, do you have enough things, or do you have enough food on the table? So there's a lot of different meanings to this word. And as I reflect on the work that I do with individuals, when I'm doing financial counseling, that's a concept that we really don't speak a whole lot about. We talk about what a dream home looks like, but do we ever ask, what does enough house look like for us right now? And why aren't we looking for that? And similarly, we have plans in terms of retirement, and we have an entire industry focused on retirement that is so focused on, saving certain percentages. But do we stop to think, what does enough of a retirement look like for us? What does our lifestyle look like? And why isn't that driving the conversation in terms of how much we need to save as opposed to percentages? And so as I was reflecting on my personal journey over the last couple of years, this word just kept circling back and coming up. And I thought it was important to start having that conversation.
Do you have a connection to Portugal?
So my parents emigrated from Portugal. I'm first generation Canadian.
Okay.
And so, my first language at home was Portuguese. And so it wasn't until I started kindergarten that I started the English language. So I find that, when I'm gripping for words or concepts, I revert to Portuguese. And this, this word keeps popping up in my mind a lot when counseling.
You talked about your personal journey. One thing you've been quite public about is the weight loss that you pursued and were successful in over the course of that time. We're going to talk about finances, but I think there's a powerful metaphor to think about your insight around enough when it comes to health.
Absolutely. And so, the beginning of the pandemic, I really started seeing that things were getting out of control. And my health for many years had been out of control. And I got up to the point where, my biggest weight, I was at about 270, just a little over pounds. And so pandemic hits, and all of a sudden, everything in my life started turning upside down. You couldn't go to the office, you're isolated. And again, it's one of those words where I've just had enough, or it was basta, right? Like I just had enough and I needed to do something. And I've tried to do things in the past in order to lose weight and all those kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a second, I need to revert to what I know. And I need to go back to the lessons that I've learned over the last 21 years, all of these financial concepts. And I need to start thinking if there's a way that I can apply it to my wellness journey. And sure enough, all of the words and all of the tips and tricks and the little sayings that I give to individuals, just came back and cycled in my head. And, we're 2 years later, 90 pounds lighter. And, it just seemed to work. And so, finances and health and wellness and all of those things that get associated with it, there is a connection. And I just started, as I was reflecting on it, just seeing more and more of it.
You and I both spend a lot of our time, most of our work time, dealing with and engaging with and trying to help people with debt that they can't manage. And there are an infinite number of reasons why that is. It is not everybody going to the mall and overspending on a credit card. There are root causes like mental health, there's divorce, there's job loss, there's all those sorts of things. Give me a flavor, though, for how you would have the conversation about enough for someone who is dealing with debt that they cannot manage.
Well, the first time that somebody speaks to me, it's because they've reached a critical point in their path where they have had enough. They're fed up. They're dodging their mailbox. They're not answering their phone calls because they're afraid that the collectors are going to be hounding them. They're not. They're keeping things from their spouses. So that's the first time that really it reaches that threshold where they're fed up and they've had enough, and then they come to me and they think, okay, what can I do? And from that perspective and getting people back on track, it is really about how much is enough. And from a financial planning perspective, we talk about budgeting, and it becomes, there are really only three things you control: how much you earn, what you're saving, and what you're spending. And you have to balance each of those categories and make sure you have enough in each of those categories. If you're on a fixed income, your spending needs to be less. And so, but you also need to make sure that your basic necessities are being met. So how do we do that? How do we supplement that? And how do we make sure that you do have enough? But again, it's coming back to the question, what does enough look like? And I talked about housing as a prime example. For many of my clients, again, as I suggested to you, there's this dream about what the dream house looks like. And they go out into the housing market, and that's what they look for. They look for the granite countertops. They look for, the hardwood floors. They look for the multiple bedrooms, to make sure, because, there's going to be company that's going to come. So you need to have the spare bedroom. And so we're doing all of that. And then I stop and I say, okay, so now that we know what, your dream house looks like, what does enough house look like for the way that you're living currently? And can we build to that dream house? Because what you'll see is there's a shift, and it's oftentimes a significant shift in terms of what is enough and that dream. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to achieve the dream, but it means that, you have to be cognizant of the resources that you have.
One of the other dynamics that a lot of people who are dealing with debt have to manage is a scarcity mindset, in which, for whatever reason, they're just so concerned about not having enough groceries, just not having enough things around. And so they overbuy or overconsume as a way to tamp that down.
Absolutely.
That would seem to be a very relevant and practical conversation to have with those who overshop.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we think of over shopping as it's a lack of self-control, but it comes back to, as you said, it's the scarcity mindset. And when we hear that Canada is one of the leaders among, industrial nations in food waste, you can see that. And it's because we're afraid that, oh my God, you're living paycheck to paycheck. You have money right now. You need to stock up on your groceries right now, because you don't know what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. We have to shift that mindset, and we have to start thinking about budgeting very differently, and make sure that we have, we convert to more of that abundance mindset, and think, if we know that we have enough income and we've done our budget, if we just stick to that budget, we know we're going to be fine. And that's the shift that I try to have with my clients. It's having that game plan. Now, budget has become a 4-letter word in our culture, and it means, it's the same with diet, right? You hear budget, you hear diet, and you think, oh my God, it's completely restrictive. And to be honest with you, Bruce, if I shared with you my budget and I shared it with the audience members, there's going to be things on my budget that they're going to say, well, hang on a second, you spend that on that category, and one of them is travel. And so, and the reality is, yes, that's important to me. And so I make sure that I'm allotting myself dollars, in my budget, to make sure that that's covered. But I also know that I cannot be spending in that way in every expense category. So where is my trades off? What are my priorities? How do I make sure I have enough in each of my other categories, but still allow myself enough to travel?
The other tough conversation to have is that it is not enough in terms of income, because for many people trying to tackle debt, what's required, there's only so far they can go on expense reduction.
Correct.
And they need to go out and get a second job to stave off crisis. That's not an easy conversation to have either.
It is absolutely not an easy conversation, and you need to think about what the trade-offs are. So getting that second job or increasing that income and pulling that lever certainly is going to help. But I keep telling my clients, and similarly, from a fitness perspective, you can't out train a poor diet, and you can't say that you can't out earn a poor budget. It's very similar, right? And so we need to keep that in mind. And so what we in those situations, if you have a lot of debt and you're not sure that you're going to be able to manage it, and you can't easily get that second job, or it's going to cause strain on your family, it's time to seek professional advice and get somebody in. And that's something that I learned again through my wellness journey, and something that I knew. There's a humility that comes with this, with this line of work, and with fitness as well, in that you don't have all of the answers yourself, and you need to actually go and get your advisors and figure out what you can do. There are a lot of great options in Canada for people that are struggling with debt, and to help them achieve, a different path. And so it's a matter of getting the right advisor and somebody that you trust, and moving forward on that path.
Mike, thank you for your time today.
Bruce, thank you for having me.
Bastante. Did I do okay on that? Bastante.
You did great.
Okay, good. Obrigado for your time.
De nada.
Good. Hey, Mike Braga, licensed insolvency trustee with BDO Canada, the host of Money Matters on Rogers Television.